We're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. We're working on the air conditioning. Need everybody to stop breathing for a few minutes. Thank everybody for being here. What we always do with our South Bossier Luncheon is we open up in a word of prayer, and then we'll follow that with the pledge, and then we'll allow everybody to get in line and grab food, get seated, and then we'll get started with the meeting. Today we're going to be opening prayer by Chip Layton with Congressman Mike Johnson's office.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we praise your name and thank you for this time together. Thank you, Lord, for men and women who will put themselves on the line for the betterment of the community. Lord, we pray for you bless our country, but also convict our country and lead us in the ways you want us to go. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Amen. And Chris Smith, please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody just kind of form a line, get in and get your food, and then we'll get started in about 10 minutes. going to go ahead and get started, everybody. I apologize for being a little warm in here, but I got that one cranked down to 65 now, so hopefully it'll get a little bit cooler. Thank you all for being here and joining us for the South Bossier Luncheon. There's a lot of people in here. This is your first time here, so those of you that come regularly, you've heard this spiel before, but really appreciate everybody being here. The South Bossier Lunch Group, Dennis and I started it almost 10 years ago now. We meet the second Wednesday of every month, and it's an opportunity for our community leaders, our business leaders, to get in the room and meet with our elected officials. And in cases like today, we get to hear from two people that are running for office. I personally think it's very important to hear from every candidate when we're getting ready for election time. So not only this month do we have two candidates, but next month we'll have Dodie Horton and Chris Turner here. And the month after that, we'll just have to see who's got opponents in August and see about getting those, getting some of those folks in here. But again, thank you all for being here. I know we have a big crowd. I've seen a few legends in the room. I might, as we're going through, like we always do, we allow elected officials. If you're here from if you're an elected official or somebody that's representing an elected official's office, please stand up and introduce yourself. And then there's a few coaching icons in the room that I'm going to take personal privilege to introduce to everybody. So we're going to get started over here against the wall. And you're first up to introduce yourself.
I'm Mary Ann Van Osdale, Senator Peacock's legislative assistant, and I'm on the Republican State Central Committee.
Very good. Coming down to the end of the wall, I think we got a candidate for office.
I'm Keith Sutton. I'm running for Bossier Parish Police Jury, District 12.
All right, we're just going to kind of go back. If I don't see you and you're here, there he is.
Jeff Cox, Louisiana 2nd Circuit Court of Appeals. Glad to be out in public. Thank you.
The finest court in the world. Glad to have you here.
Chris Turner, I'm running for state representative of District 12.
All right, we're coming around the back wall. Again, if I miss you, just stop. Come up here. All right, this is where I'm going to stop and introduce two legends in South Bossier that are at the back of the room. We've got Mr. Bobby Marlowe, Coach Bobby Marlowe, and Coach Ken Crudoff in the back. Please, everybody give them a Coach Rayner hadn't made that legend status yet, but he's getting close. We also have Parkway High School boys basketball coach Brian Rayner in the back room. Brian, thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Bass. I'm on the Bossier Parish School Board for District 5. It's good to see everybody, and we have fans in Northern Bossier if y'all would like to come up there.
Hey, it's a good thing y'all have fans because y'all's attendance is pretty low. Sorry. All right, Mr. Fulton.
Eric Fulton, Bossier School Board, District 12.
Dennis, you saying I missed it? Yeah, we're coming up to the front table.
Dodie Horton, State Rep, District 9, and it's great to be home from session. Yeah.
This front table, go ahead, sir, I skipped you.
Lee Clemens, representing J. Schuyler Moss, District Attorney.
Thank you for being here. Scooter, you representing the Sheriff's Department today? No, sir? All right. Front table over here, I do see two more legends that I want to introduce. We got Coach Earp and Coach Toms that are here with us today. Thank y'all for being here. I'm going to sneak over to this table. There might be somebody over here.
Matt Howerton, representing Senator Robert Mills.
I'm Robert Wright. I'm a constable down here in South Bossier, a member of the Republican State Central Committee. I think I'm stacking them up. I'm a parish executive committee member also, and I'm the newest member of the Board of Election Supervisors. So that's
All right.
I'm Tommy Chandler. I'm blessed to be the mayor of the great city of Bossier City.
I'm Thomas Presley. honestly, I represent District 6 in the state legislature and the House of Representatives. Had a great opportunity to represent you over the last 4 years. My district actually is shifting back over the Red River moving forward, but I really appreciate the opportunity to represent this area of Bossier over the last 4 years.
I'm Brian Hammonds, Bossier City Council, District 1, which is down here in South Bossier.
Chris Smith, Bossier City Councilman at Large.
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Jill Sessions. I'm your Bossier Parish Clerk of Court.
Brenda Autry, representing Legislative Assistant to Senator Robert Mills.
Seabaugh with U.S. Senator John Kinman's office.
And I'll stop there for a second. I'm going to make Lynn Bryan stand up. She does keep Bossier beautiful and helps out with a lot of projects that we do. Laura, you can go next.
Laura Seabaugh, representing my favorite Attorney General, Jeff Landry.
All right, now we're going to the back row of chairs and kind of through there.
Don't forget Alan.
Yeah, we're not introducing Alan yet. He's going to be here. Pam, stand up. I'm sorry.
I wasn't going to stand up since you made me. Pam Brown, representing Congressman Mike Johnson.
Pam, you know you're one of my favorites. I didn't skip you on purpose.
Stephanie McKenzie, representing Senator Bill Cassidy's office.
I'm from the non-governmental entity, the Bossier Chamber of Commerce, and he always makes me sad. I'm Jessica Hemingway, Vice President there.
I know, to come in on top of that, you know, the Bossier Chamber works a lot with our elected officials to make things happen. So that's why I always, if you or Lisa are here, I want y'all to introduce yourself. So thank y'all for what y'all do. All right, we're going to the back corner. I can't really see. Do we have anybody else back there? I see.
That's
Yes.
Matt McKee, Congressman Mike Johnson's office. We also have our new intern, Van Morgan.
And then I'm going to come back up to the front because I think I missed two up here. Dennis.
I'm Dennis Bamberg. I hope to not be the third speaker he was talking about in 2 months. I am running for State Rep District 5.
My name is Michael Ferris, and I'm your candidate for Bossier Parish Police Jury District 1. I'm looking forward to representing everyone.
And I think that's everybody. So if this is the first time you've been at this meeting, I have to tell you, a lot of these elected officials and leaders are here month in and month out. And so if you want an opportunity to hear from them, to network with them, to have a conversation with them, I invite you to come back to each month, second Wednesday of every month. We've got an email list. If you want to give me your email, I'll add it to you. We also have a Facebook page. But again, thank y'all for being here. I know y'all didn't come here to listen to me talk, so we're going to kind of cut through that. One of the things that Dennis is kind of sitting out, obviously, so I'm running the show by myself today as he prepares for his own campaign, or possible no campaign if he doesn't have an opponent. But so to keep him neutral, because he might have to work with some of these candidates that are going to be speaking over the next few months, I get the privilege of welcoming everybody and introducing everybody. So we're really excited today as we have both candidates that are coming to speak to us to represent our area for state senator in District 31. And we didn't flip a coin to see who goes first. We went alphabetical order. We'll be doing that next month for Dodie and Chris as well, alphabetical order. So, McConathy comes before Seabaugh. So we're going to have Coach McConathy speak first. Obviously, to most people in the room, he needs no introduction, as He is a legendary basketball coach from our area. So I'm gonna step aside and let y'all hear from him. And Coach McConathy, thank you for being here today.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to come out and talk to you. I'm not a politician, and I guess I'm trying to be a politician. Figure that out. Maybe a coach. I've been a politician all my life, and I didn't know that. I'll have to ask some of my players if I was a politician when I was coaching them. But the obvious question is, what's my why? Why am I doing this? You know, I coached 44 years. Why am I doing this? You know, I want to be impactful. In the room right now, if you were a teacher or coach, raise your hand. If you're in law enforcement, raise your hand. If you're in the medical profession, raise your hand. If you're, you know, all those people, firemen as well, military. You know, I mean, that was first on my list, but I wasn't reading it, okay? But all those people have had an impact on their communities. And as a teacher and a coach, I've always felt like I had an impact. And I always coached with the idea of it was a redeeming value that you were giving someone that you would get and they would get from having an impact with you. And being a strong believer, it also means that you've got giving them an eternal perspective if you live that way and you emphasize that in your life. So that's one of the main things about coaching. But the other thing that was really important in this decision, and through prayer, of course, Connie, my wife Connie, right here, 44 years. Sorry I didn't introduce her. She did say one thing. She said, "Do you ever think you might get beat?" I said, "I've been getting beat all my life." So the area and the district appeals to me because I grew up in Bossier City. And Bossier City, you know, Parkway and Airline and Bossier were kind of all connected at that time. You know, we were all right together. And so being from Bossier City, lived here basically for 44, well, actually I lived in Gibson, Louisiana, the first 6 months of my life. That was important. Moved to Natchitoches, lived in Natchitoches for 23 years. My family grew up in Bienville Parish. My dad grew up on a farm there. We have a place that was my dad's now that's in Bienville Parish. My son, Logan, back here, works in Webster Parish. So that really and truly gives me connections to about 5 different parts of the parish. And I really think with 8 rural parishes in the district, living in a rural parish is very, very important to me because I understand what a lot of the struggles, as well as other people understand too, but I think I'm actually living that and I'm seeing it on a daily basis. I want to tell you a quick little story, and I'm going to try to spin it back to the thing. Call it put it in the box. There was a pastor in Colorado, and this pastor in Colorado asked his son, "Would you like to go to church with me today early before the service?" And the little boy said, "Yeah, Dad, I'd love to go." So they go to church. They go in, they sit down, they have their prayers. Then they get up and they go open the shutters because they're in Colorado. It's cold. Light the furnace. And then his dad goes over to the wall. Now, that's why I'm looking around. I guess we'll use this light fixture as it is. Went over to the box. That's where they put their tithes and offerings. So he walked over and he put his tithes and offerings in the box. They had a great service. Amazing service. Come back into the service, close the shutters, turn the fire down. He goes over to the box, takes the tithes and offerings out of the box. He's got a real disappointed look on his face. And his son said, "Dad, what's wrong?" He said, "Son, the only thing we put in the box, only thing that's in the box is what we put in the box." The little boy was pretty sharp. He said, "If we put more in the box, Dad, there'd been more to take out." Okay, now how does that have an impact, see, to what we're doing? That box that we've got over on the wall, there's a lot of things that are in that box that we're putting in it. When I tell this story and use it in basketball, you talk about good, bad, evil, whatever. Well, from a political standpoint, the things we're putting in that box, we're wanting to be able to make those things be successful. And okay, so education. needs to be something successful, because if we've got a great education system, if we can get kids to where by the 3rd grade that they're reading on their level, then we're not going to have near the struggle on down the road if we do that early. So we got to invest early in that. We cannot wait. And it's like when I used to teach personal health, I would tell kids in personal health, you better start parenting your child the day they come home. And I used to say, don't think you're going to wait until they get to be 8 or 10 because they don't want to spend any time with you after that. They want to go somewhere else. So we got to get with our kids early. We have to honor our teachers and understand our teachers are so important to us. They're important to them. Why did they choose to do that? Because they have a real desire to see people learn, see people improve, and see people, their lives become better because of that. So education naturally is just a huge thing. Juvenile justice is something that I really kind of have a passion for, and I think that's because growing up as a coach and a teacher and seeing kids along the way, and I think about the kids that I met with yesterday. In fact, I ended up getting one of my former players' birth certificate yesterday afternoon so he could go to the to interview to get in the Air Force. And I called him. I said, "You've got to do this." He said, "Well, Coach, you got my birth certificate." So I had to go find his birth certificate that I had kept for him because I knew that I needed to keep it, because at his home there's 11 children there. At his home. And it needed to be done. So we took care of that. But understanding that the importance, the system is in place, as I've talked to a lot of people, but it is a local issue because the funds have to come from the local entities to be able to fund it, from what I have learned. And I know there's a lot more that I've got to learn about those type of things. But we've got to do that because crime is rampant, and we know that, but we're going to have to fix that at an early age too, just like we're trying to fix education at an early age so that we can move forward. Naturally, our infrastructure, roads, bridges, many people have said we just need to take DOTD. I've heard this all over this district. We just need to take DOT somewhere out. This is other people talking, not me. We just need to do something because I know there's good people that work in DOTD. But we need to make some adjustments. Why does it take so long to do something? I understand the process. I was a teacher, and I understand capital outlay. I understand those things, all those things that go in place. But at the same time, we have to find a way to make it more expedient so that we can get things going to where it doesn't take so long to get it done. And we also have to be above on top of it, looking down the road, the things that need to be done before and not be behind the game. And I think a lot of times we're behind in the game because we're not getting ahead of it. And I think that's very, very important. People's property rights. You think about property rights and you think about that there's always issues that seems like that more and more people are trying to, it seems like they want to take away our rights to be property owners. And then when they do use our property, are they returning it to the level that they should? Like my deal at my house, I was always taught that you leave something better than you found it. And that really it would be a great way to go about and doing that to make sure that we do a good job with that. But if we put all of our resources in these areas that we have and we've got a plan, it's not going to happen overnight. But for me, 67 years old, I would like to see things continue to improve and get better in my later years as I go on, because that's important. I coached for 44 years. And I think that this is an analogy that is important for me to make. When I coached, we always were going up against opponents that were much better funded than we were. We were going against opponents that quite possibly had a lot more talent. Two of the guys in here played on the NCAA tournament team, Chris and Brian. But in 5-6, we beat Winthrop that year, but in 5-6 we beat Iowa. There's no way we're supposed to beat Iowa. So somebody would say, well, why are you talking about that? I'm talking about this because really and truly that's the way I look at Louisiana. We're underfunded compared to a lot of states. We don't have some of the things, but some of the things we have are unbelievable. Our natural resources, our wildlife. But the thing that's the greatest about Louisiana is the people. And you just think about that, the people that you know and you meet all over the state, and how genuine they are. And Louisiana people can fix things. They can do things. But what are we going to do? We've got to learn to educate them, the young ones, to be able to come along. And I left out one of my things, but I'll come back to it now. On vocational education, one of my teammates named Ricky Richards from Stark, Louisiana, told me a story recently. He said his son was getting ready to go to school, graduate. He said, son, what you going to do? Where are you going to school? Ricky was from Stark, Louisiana. That's a suburb of Rayville and Monroe. And he said, Dad, I'm going to go to vocational school and I'm going to go be an electrician. Because I'm not going to go to a college and get $100,000 in debt to get a $40,000 a year job. That's right. And somehow we have to get our young people to understand that they don't have to go to a 4-year college. And the degree plans that we offer make us job ready, and they're market sensitive to be able to go into there. You look at nursing, for instance. We've got deficit hiring there because we don't have any enough. Well, if we increase the number of spots in our nursing schools, and you'd say, well, that's going to cost more money. Well, maybe you can move the money around from different departments to be able to increase classes of nurses, because that's so critical. And we've learned that, especially in the last 4 years after what we've experienced with COVID. So those things are also very, very important, I think. So if we can put those things in that box and we can make them better and bring them out of that box, and that box end up being overflowing because we've created this energy, and we've won the game, we've gotten back in the game. We've won the game because we've done so much more with what we had than we were before. And there was a young lady that was in Natchitoches, and she was on a talk show. It kills me, I can't remember her name. I mean, I can see her, but in closing, I want to I want to tell you what she said on TV. She said, "Put me in, Coach." That was her "Put me in, Coach." Well, how many times do you think I had a player tell me to put me in, Coach? So I'm asking you to put me in Louisiana and let me get in the game. And I'm going to compete in the game for you just like I competed as a player, as a coach, because I think all that comes into play. So I thank you, and I want you to be prayerful for this campaign for Alan and myself, because my theory is that God will put who He wants in the office, and that's what we need to be doing, seeking His will. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. Really appreciate you coming and speaking to us today. And with that, I also will say, whoever wins this campaign, I hope you're back here every month to allow the people of South Bossier to be here and to listen and conversate with you. And with that, I'll introduce our current state representative, Alan Seabaugh, who I have to brag on Alan just a little bit. He's been coming to this luncheon for at least 5 years, maybe longer than that. So as an elected official, he's been here to be able to speak and have conversations with people. Alan?
Thank you. This is a campaign event, but I'm actually going to take a little personal privilege before I get into that and talk about the elephant in the room, which is the Jimmy Davis Bridge. Let me tell y'all what is going on. This is the biggest non-story I can think of. Not $1 that was set to be spent on the Jimmy Davis Bridge was taken out. Not $1. Amen. Nothing is going to be delayed, not by one day. In fact, they put signs up yesterday, I think, that they're going to start closing the bridge at night. Everything's going forward. What has happened in the past several years through the legislature, through funds like ARP and some others, the money for the bridge has already been appropriated. It's in the bank and it's sitting there, ready to go. What happened was there's in the vehicle capital outlay, there's priority 1, which is cash this year. Priority 5 is future, not this year, future. And what happened is there's been $15 million in priority 5 for the last several years. It's there again. It's still there. There was an effort to bump it up a little because the contract was signed, and the money for the contract was a little bit more than we had anticipated. So at some point, we're going to have to come back and add more money to fill out the contract. But that might be 3-4 years from now. It's not this year. So what was taken out of the budget, off the document, was actually not real dollars. It was not anything that was going to be spent, and that nothing is going to be delayed. So everything is going forward. So anything you hear to the contrary, somebody's either deliberately misleading you or they're woefully uninformed. So, all right, and real quick, I'm going to take a quick aside. There's been a lot of slings and arrows thrown at Dodie about her vote because her name was on that project. She certainly wasn't the only one in the legislature advocating for that project, but she had her name on it. And I can tell you, we went through a really, really bad time the last several weeks. And there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of threats, and there was a lot of arm twisting. She didn't buckle. And I tell you what, anybody that says that's a reason to not elect her doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Because that lady has some backbone. And she stood up and she said, you can threaten me, but I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to represent the people who sent me down there, and I'm not going to back up. I can't tell you how much I appreciate her and how much I adore spending time with her in the legislature. She's got backbone. And we need people with backbone because it's not that easy down there. Because there's a lot of threats. And projects did get moved. They got moved from some districts to others. And some projects were moved out of Houghton. And I'm just going to say it because it's the elephant in the room. If you want to know why projects were moved out of Houghton, ask Robert Mills.
That's right.
Because he moved them from Houghton to Webster Parish, which he also represents. But he took them out of Dodie's district because of her vote. Robert Mills moved them. So if you want to know where they are and why they're not in Houghton anymore, don't talk to Dodie. Talk to Robert Mills. All right, now I'm going to move on.
Thank you, Alan.
My name's Alan Seabaugh. I'm a state representative in Shadow Creek. I want to start by introducing my wife, Laura. She's here actually representing Jeff Landry, but I think she represents me pretty well too. We both Captain Shreve grads. We went 4 daughters, all out of school. One's still in college. One of the biggest problems we have with this state is we have 2 kids that have finished college and they both live in Dallas. Louisiana's got a problem with out-migration, and that's something we have to work on. I've been a state representative since 2010, and actually one of the things that I often brag about is the quality of my opponent that I beat in 2010. I think I beat the best opponent that we've had run that didn't win up here in a really long time, a guy named Harold Turner. He was president of a bank. He was on every board and commission. He was a great guy, and I think I beat a really, really strong opponent to get there. In fact, I would often tell other state reps, tell me about your opponent because I bet mine was better. And I'm going to say this, I know I'm running against Mike, but I think I got a good one this time. And I think if I carry that to the Senate, I'm going to still be able to say the same thing. Because Mike's a good guy. I appreciate everything that he did, but this is not basketball. State legislature is a completely different ballgame. And you know, I've been there and I've been down there and I've seen it done. When I ran in 2010, I made certain promises. And I've kept those promises. I went down there and I opposed every tax increase to the extent that I actually single-handedly filibustered a special session. I talked until midnight so they couldn't vote and killed a special session because my constituents did not want to pay higher taxes. That was a huge sales tax and an income tax increase. I got the House floor and I didn't give it up. And I talked until midnight, made them come back. They did ultimately pass a tax increase, but it was not nearly as bad and it was a lot less. I have a 100% voting record with the National Rifle Association. I have a 100% voting record with Louisiana Right to Life. Certain things are not going to be compromised, and that's one with me. I've kept my word on law enforcement. I got moved a couple of years ago. I got put on the Criminal Justice Committee. I'm an attorney, but I'm not a criminal defense attorney. I've never been a prosecutor. I did not want to be on the Criminal Justice Committee because that's not really my wheelhouse. But I've flourished there and I've loved it. If you look close, I'm wearing a Sheriff's Association pin because I've become one of the floor leaders for the Sheriff's Association. And the DAs, but they don't give out pins. As far as law and order goes, you can look around the state. It's really hard to look to anywhere in the state and not see crime as a problem. And I've been there with the sheriffs and the DAs. We've got some bills passed that are sitting on the governor's desk that if he signs them, are going to actually fix some things. I don't know if he's going to sign them. We hadn't gotten any indications, but he might. And juvenile justice, 17-year-olds, what to do with 17-year-olds is, if you talk to sheriffs across the state, the number one thing they will tell you is what to do with 17-year-olds. And the reason that's an issue is up until about 5 or 6 years ago, 17-year-olds were considered adults, and they were prosecuted in the adult system. About 5 years ago, they changed the age where 17-year-olds were juveniles. Well, 17-year-olds commit a lot more crime than 16-year-olds, and the juvenile facilities did not have the capacity to house them. And there are horror stories all over the state. I had a sheriff's deputy in another parish tell me they had a situation just a couple of months ago where a 17-year-old beat up his mother and had to be released to his mother later that day because they just didn't have a place for him. And what we passed a bill, Senator Stewart Cathy and I had a bill that we worked through that is going to change it back to where 17-year-olds are now adults. And that's going to be a tremendous relief to law enforcement, to sheriffs, and how they can house and take care of 17-year-olds. That's just something that I didn't anticipate going down there to be the law and order guy. Crime, of course, it's pretty obvious, but getting in the weeds like I've done with the Sheriff's Association has been really the one of the highlights of the last 4 years down there. I have been, the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry gives awards every year. They actually give baseball bats. They have Marucci baseball bats. They have an MVP for Most Valuable Policymaker, and they have All-Star for All-Star Policymaker. I'm the only legislator in Baton Rouge that's gotten 8. They've done it for 8 years. I'm the only one down there with 8 bats. Yeah. I'm the only one that's gotten a bat every year. The National Federation of Independent Business named me the Guardian of Small Business. I won the Guardian of Small Business Award a few years ago for fighting for small business, fighting against taxes, and fighting for reducing regulation for business. The biggest thing when I look across my district and the people that I talked to when I ran 12 years ago is I've kept my word. And I'm going to keep doing that in the state Senate. It's important. It's sometimes, look, it's easy to get up here and say I'm pro-Second Amendment and pro-life. But when you get in that committee or on the floor, because everything is not cut and dry. Everything is not clear because there's ways of tweaking. There's a thing called incrementalism where people try to take your rights away a little bit at a time. Oh, this isn't that bad. We'll just add this. Well, when you commit, and you commit like I did, you commit and you stick with it. And sometimes, again, it's not that easy. And trying to look through the nuances. And I'll give you a good example. The senator who represents District 31 now, he's not running for re-election for a couple of reasons. One, he made promise to the Loggers Association. He got down there, he voted against the loggers. But two, he voted against the NRA on a concealed carry bill. And he was absolutely not going to get reelected. And he knew that because he broke a promise. And it was a nuance. It was a little slight tweak, but it was a big deal to a lot of people. And you can't do that. If you make a promise, you stick with it. And that's something that I've done, something I'm very proud of. And again, sometimes it's not that easy. I started running for Senate. I started thinking about running for Senate when this was Barrow Peacock's district. It was half Caddo and half Bossier, roughly. Because I'm looking at Louisiana, and his term limits, clock and mine, were the same, so it would have been an easy transition. Louisiana is in a really, really bad spot right now. We're the only southern state that more people are moving out of than in. Again, I mentioned my daughter's in Dallas. We're the only southern state that's losing jobs with respect to our neighboring states. We have the highest income tax and business taxes in the South. And we also the only state in the South with a liberal Democrat governor. And I think all those things are related to each other. We have tried to fix those things, and with him with the veto pen, we just can't. So next year, I don't believe there's any way we're going to have a Democrat governor next year. Unless there was some talk about DOTD earlier. The guy who's head of DOTD is running for governor. And I think his campaign platform is, I'll do for Louisiana what I've done for the roads. I hope that's not a long-term strategy. But I had a Representative Jack McFarland said he's so slow, he'll run for governor in 23, but he'll start putting out signs in 2024. So I would strongly recommend you not vote for Sean Wilson. Everybody else is a good Republican that are running, and we're going to be in a better position going into 2024 to be able to fix some of these things. And I've been there, and I've seen what has happened over the last 12 years. I've seen the good bills that didn't pass. I've seen the bad bills that did. I've seen the situation. Some of the problems were created by the legislature. Laura gets mad at me when I say we passed it. I voted against it, but the criminal justice reform 5 or 6 years ago that basically reduced our prison population by about half. The number of incarcerated people in Louisiana right now is 52% of what it was in 2017. So what's happened since 2017? Crime has gone through the roof. I really think it's kind of hard to say there's not a relation between the two. I mean, when you let half your criminals out and you have crime committed all over the state, there's probably a connection. So let's look at it. And that's something that the governor has said, I'm going to veto anything that smacks of rolling back criminal justice reform. That's rote ideology, it's blinders on, and it's ignoring the problems that are affecting everybody in Louisiana. And thank goodness we're not going to have to deal with it anymore. I don't believe anybody coming in next time is going to be vetoing any of those good bills. And again, like I said, we're waiting on, he hadn't vetoed the ones this year. I don't want to poke the bear, but we can pass them again next year, but we need to start fixing it now. Economically, as far as business and jobs, we've got to start creating jobs. And if you look around the country, every state, the federal government treats businesses the same and people, no matter where you are, no matter what state, whether Michigan or California or Washington, your federal taxes are the same. The difference is the states. And people move to states, or businesses move to states that create a tax environment that is beneficial to the business. So if you want jobs created in Louisiana, we've got to look at our tax structure. And if you want people moving to Louisiana, we've got to create jobs here. And when Texas has no income tax, and Florida and Tennessee have no income tax, Mississippi is in the process of eliminating theirs, as is Arkansas and Oklahoma. They're either going to greatly reduce them or eliminate them. We are an outlier. Makes it really, really hard for Louisiana to look at a business in Ohio or Michigan or Germany and say, come do business in Louisiana. They would say, if we're going to move that far, why wouldn't we just go 20 miles to the west and set up in Texas? That's why we're losing out. And we've got to look at that. We've got to address it. What we've had for the last 8 years is an administration that has tried to squeeze every dime they could out of every business, because in their mentality, business was the enemy. And businesses has all the money, and so we're going to just try to squeeze every dime. And that's not how it works, and that's why businesses are closing up shop and moving. And we've got to reverse that trend. And I spent 3 years on the Ways and Means Committee, which is the committee that does tax policy for the state. And I was there when all this was being pushed through. I fought it tooth and nail with every fiber of my being. We had to go through one regular session and 3 or 4 specials, mostly because I was the one standing in the gap. I was the only one that would go to the floor and call the governor out and point out the fact that he lied about the deficit, because he did. And I was the only one, again, I went to the floor and filibustered, because you may raise taxes, but I'm not going to stop swinging until we're done. You may get the votes, but I'm not going to give you mine, because it's bad for Louisiana, and I'm not going to give you mine. And that was the stand Dodie I made last week. You may pass it, you may get other people, but you're not going to get us. And I think the people that took that vote last week are going to pay a political price. Same issue was before the legislature in 2008. That's before I was elected. Most of those legislators were there that voted to bust the spending cap when Jindal was governor. Will tell you it was the worst vote they ever cast. Worst vote they ever cast. Some people this year cast that vote, and I think it's going to come back on, because it's something that was not necessary. This is what we were looking at. We had a little over $2 billion of extra money. The question is what to do with it. What we proposed to do, and as the budget as it left the House, had a less than 1% growth. We're pretty much just spending what we did last year, but we're taking the extra and we're going to pay off the debt in the teacher retirement system. We're going to pay off the debt in the Louisiana State Employee Lasers, the State Employee Retirement System. We're going to pay that off. We're going to put it in the rainy day fund. We're going to put it away to use later when we might have deficits coming down the pike next. But what happened is John Bel Edwards tried to do what Edwin Edwards did in the 70s when he knew it was going to be term limited. He set his successor up for failure. He spent every dime, and he encumbered spending over the next several years, so whoever came in after him was going to fail. And he spent 4 years running against him because there wasn't anything that he could do about it. That's what they that's what they did this year. They spent everything. Because the retirement system debt is like a mortgage payment. It was done when Romer was governor, 40-year payout. We're on the paying it out. It's about $400 million a year that we're paying to pay that off. We'll be paying off in a lump sum this year. We don't have to make the mortgage payments. That frees up cash next year going forward. It's better for the teacher retirement system. It's better for the state employee retirement. It's better for everybody. But it wasn't better for those term-limited politicians who wanted to build monuments to themselves, like a $75 million performing arts center in Lafayette. which is not necessary. And so that's really what happened. They said, we want to spend all of this money. We want to build all these projects. We want to bust the spending cap and waste all this money. And in order to do it, they needed a 2/3 vote of both houses. They got it in the Senate. We fought them in the House. We beat them the first time, but they passed it the second. And that was the vote, busting the spending cap, where they created all the turmoil and the retribution that was aimed at Doty. Interestingly, I was one of the leaders of the movement, one of the ones fighting it. None on me. I got 0 projects cut. The reason is, my Senator Barry Milligan's a stand-up guy and didn't cut it. I have a little bit of overlap with Beryl Peacock, but I didn't have any projects in that part of the district. My senator stood up for me, didn't cut anything. That's an example to look at, to follow. We had other people in the area that didn't follow that example. They probably need to retire. You've got a situation right now going forward that you need somebody there that understands what is facing the state, that understands the issues facing the state, that understands how we got to where we are and what needs to be fixed to get the state moving back in the right direction. It's a complicated issue. I'm not saying you have to have been a legislator to understand the process. That's actually not the case. We have some really good freshman legislators. But it really helps to have somebody who's going to, like me, if I walk in the Senate on day one, I'm a leader at the table on day one. I'm not sitting on the back bench pushing a button. Even now, as a House member, I walk in the Senate, they come over and ask me what to do and ask me for advice. I'm a leader now. I've been elected chairman of the Republican delegation. I was chairman of the Conservative Caucus. I'm currently chairman of the Louisiana Freedom Caucus. My colleagues elect me leadership positions, and I've been a leader in the House, and I'll be a leader in the Senate. I walk in on day one, no learning curve. I know how everything works. I know the problems that need to get fixed. And I walk in on day one as a leader, not sitting on the back bench just pushing a button. So with that, I appreciate you, and I'll...
So normally our lunch is 12 to 1 if you're going to come back in the future, but we did 12 to 1:30 today because I wanted to have a question and answer session, afterwards. And I normally, the city councilman can tell you, I normally pull up 2 chairs and make y'all sit next to each other, but we're not going to do that. Y'all can just kind of come stand to the side of me if you don't mind, and we'll take some question and answers. We've probably got about 15 minutes for that. And then when we get done with that, the mayor will do the mayor minute and kind of update us on what's going on in Bossier City. So, yes, ma'am.
Hey, Tamara Crane, Bossier Council on Aging. Yesterday on the FAR legislative recap, Caddo representative mentioned, both kind of talked about pay and businesses and stuff, and I'm going to paraphrase, that in his area he's noticed a lot of local businesses closing, and that he really feels the way to fix this problem is to raise the state minimum wage. Where do y'all stand on that?
And we'll do alphabetical order again, so I'll allow you to.
Well, the minimum wage, is creating a lot of problems where we're paying a lot more anyway. I know raising it's what everybody wants to do, but that if you go through that, I'm going to use this example. You go through that hamburger line, and now that hamburger is about what that they would get an hour, whereas before it was less. So, I understand the concern to make more, but it always goes back to this, that we want to have those young people working, using those as young training jobs to move on. If they've got skills, they can do that. Now, that may not be totally what you're looking for, but I think that we've got to look at the larger scope rather than just at that point right there. And part of it, too, honestly, is the incentive to work. The government's put us in a bind because there a lot of people, they don't want to work because they're making more money not working. Exactly. And so that's just really difficult.
I'll say raising minimum wage is not going to keep a business from closing. It's going to make more of them close. If businesses have an option, if you're saying they're not paying their employees enough, they have an option of paying more. They don't have to pay minimum wage. They can if they want to. But raising minimum wage is something I've opposed. Doty and I sat on the Labor Committee for years, and that's a bill, sometimes 2 or 3 bills that we kill every year. You can pay more if you want to, and you should. I don't have any minimum wage employees at my law firm. You should pay more. You can if you want to, but you shouldn't have to. And that's something I'm always going to oppose because I think it's a bad idea, and all it would do is put more people out of business.
Yes, sir.
Question for you, Alan. In the state legislature, a lot of people consider you to be one of the most conservative legislatures in the state in recent memory. I would have to agree with that. That also, some of them would say that it's easier to be conservative in the legislature than it is in the Senate. I don't think we'll have a problem with you there, but I wonder if you'd speak to the fact of, are you going to remain as conservative in the Senate as you are and have been in the legislature?
Well, in the House, it is easier to be conservative in the House right now. There's no question about that. The Senate, this session, the Senate does what the governor wants. The Senate president is the governor's enforcer, and the Senate does what the governor demands that they do. So it makes it really, really hard to be conservative in the Senate. Going forward, next term, I do think it'll be easier, because I don't think, again, if Jeff Landry's governor, I'm not really going to have a problem. I think one commitment I'm going to make is, if I go to the Senate, I'm not going to back up. I'm not going to change. I'm going to keep doing what I did in the House, because when I got to the House 13 years ago, it was a good old boys club, and it was collegial, and people didn't do the things that I did. And in fact, when I walked in the first day, I put a Tea Party flag on my desk, a don't tread on me flag on my desk. And I had a reporter come up, and it said, this was during the Tea Party, this was in 2011. Had a reporter come up and say, how many people you got in your Tea Party caucus? I said, it was just me, but I just got here, give me time. And as we're leaving, we've had a conservative caucus and a freedom caucus formed since then. And, and we've changed the culture in the House since I got there. And I have every intention of doing everything I can to change the culture in the Senate, because the Senate is where good bills go to die. Several bills we passed this year made it to the Senate and got stalled or killed because the governor didn't want to veto them. So he said, make sure these don't pass so I don't have to veto them. And what we did in the House is we started amending and messing with Senate bills until we forced their hand and they got them to get those bills out of committee. Governor still might veto them, but we at least got them passed. And so that's considered an aggressive tactic, something people don't normally do. But when you're fighting against people who are bad guys, you have to use the tricks and the tools that you have in your toolbox. And I'll take that mentality to the Senate, and I really hope I can come back here in 4 years and show you that I didn't change.
Can I get one more?
Yes, sir.
All politicians mail these out when they're running, and this question for both of you. How important do you think it is to the 4 or 5 bullet points that people run on, accomplishing those and keeping your word to your representative, even when it may be hard to do so as a result of earlier in the week and last week what was going on, to keep what we commit to? I know we're very blessed with some new people you talked about down there, and even in our local government. It's been quite refreshing. We have a clerk of court here that years ago when she ran, I've still got the deal, and she checked off, if I remember right, 5 items. She's done every single one of them. So when I pull that out and it's time to vote again, it's an easy decision. We've got some city councilmen that were new in the industry in the last couple of years, and they've done exactly what they said they'd do, and they represent the people, and I appreciate that. Thank you for that. But if you comment on these, I'd appreciate it.
I would encourage you to hang on to it, because if I do win, I'm going to be back in 4 years. And again, I've been re-elected to the House 3 times. I've been elected 4 times, re-elected 3 times. And each time I've been able to go back and have that same conversation. You saw the push card that I put out 4 years ago. Have I kept my promises? Have I kept my word? And my constituents have overwhelmingly voted me back in 3 times, because I have kept my word. I encourage you to keep it. If you have any questions about where I am on something, call me. That's my cell phone number on the card. I'm very accessible. I'll return your phone call, and I will put, I'm going to keep my word, because that's all I got. And, you send me down there to do something, I'm going to do it. If you call me about something I haven't given you my word on, if I'm not with you, I'm going to tell you. And I'll tell you I can't be with you, and I'll tell you why, and I'll give you a chance to change my mind. But I'm not going to go back on anything that I've committed to.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm going to answer it this way. My dad and his 2 brothers were, one of his brothers was going to Northwestern State University. And then his buddy, Red Smith, Coach Marlowe, Coach Crudoff know him. He was growing up with him, and he talked him into going to Louisiana Tech for a visit. Well, he had already committed to go to Northwestern State. So they go over to visit, they come back. He writes a letter, JL, wrote a letter to the AD and the coach and said, I am not going to come to Northwestern, I'm going to Louisiana Tech. Well, the coach and the AD both showed up at Northwestern State. From Northwestern, showed up at the farm. They waited off until they came out of the field. And my grandpa Said, yes, sir, what can we do for you? He said, well, your son told us that he was going to come to Northwestern. Now he's decided to go to Louisiana Tech. Hey, my grandpa didn't talk a whole lot. He looked at me and said, boy, did you do that? He said, yes, sir. He said, that's a mighty poor way of doing business. Our word is our bond. And that's the way I think we have to get back to that operation. So that's what I would try to do as well, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the state of Louisiana, we have a huge problem with the cost of our insurance, whether it's homeowners or car insurance or whatever it is. Y'all agree? Yeah. There's a group down there that works really hard every year in their lobby, the trial lawyers, to be able to keep this to where we have such a litigious environment, and that's what is one of the huge things that is causing us such a problem with our insurance. One, are either one of you supported by the trial lawyers, number one? Number two, what is it that you want to do over the next 4 years to try to get our insurance rates down?
Well, I have trial lawyers that support me. Okay? They're guys that supported me for 23 years as a basketball coach. Here's what I told them. I said, if you want to support me, I'm all for that. But you need to understand that just because you support me doesn't mean I'm voting the way that you want me to vote.
I know that's right.
And that's so very important to understand that that's the struggle we run into, but you have to make sure that you don't allow that to happen. How can rates go down? You know, what was it, 17% that they've gone up this year? I mean, you know, it's a tough thing. And, you know, when you think about this is kind of off, but you think about we get a car inspected so we can drive a car on the road, but we go out on a road that's got a pothole in it and we hit it, they're not inspecting the road. And so it's a struggle because it's in cost and everything is going up. We know that. But I don't have an answer for that at this point. And I won't try to tell you something I don't know. But I appreciate the opportunity to share that.
Thank you, Coach.
Well, I do have an answer what to do about it. Again, I was vice chairman of the insurance committee. I served on the committee for 8 years. In my day job, I'm an attorney, and that's the area of law I practice in. And I can tell you, the answer to just about every question like that is look at the states that are better than we are and see what they're doing different. The states like even Mississippi or Texas, they have much lower auto insurance rates than we do. So look at them and see what they're doing different. And there's a lot. You can reform the litigation environment from a loser pays standpoint. There's a lot of things that we can do. Let's have both sides have some skin in the game. We don't do that right now. We're completely one-sided. We have a lot of presumptions in our law that are greatly in favor of the plaintiff, that put the defendant, that put the insurance company behind the 8 ball. There's a lot of problems that we have with the way our litigation environment. If you look like, good example, Louisiana Farm Bureau. Southern Farm Bureau is 6 states. Louisiana Farm Bureau brings in 19% of the premium, but pays out 52% in the settlement dollars. It's greatly out of, Louisiana is way out of whack, way out of whack. And when you have to look at Mississippi as an example of how to do something right, you know we're having a problem. And I say that in all seriousness. Mississippi was, Jay Darden, when he was lieutenant governor, used to have a speech he gave called Thank God for Mississippi. Because if it wasn't for Mississippi, we'd be last in everything. Well, we are last in everything now. Because Mississippi got their act together about 15 years ago, started electing conservative Republican governors, conservative legislatures, and fundamentally transforming the way they did business. They're not perfect. I'm not saying I want to emulate Mississippi on too many fronts, but there are some that they get it right. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to have all the answers or know all the answers before you get there. But you have to be able to look at other states and see what they're doing different and find things to emulate. Because the answers are out there. And again, one of my daughters just moved to Texas, and she, maybe in May or April, she texted me and said, hey, I just checked with an insurance agent here. If I switch my insurance to Texas, it's going to be about half. And I can't believe I didn't remind her to do that. But she's living in Texas with a Louisiana insurance, and it's high. And that's it. That should be embarrassing to all of us that we've let it get that bad. And I do think trial lawyers are a big part of the problem.
Are you getting support from them?
Not any to my knowledge.
think your hand was up first.
Since we've mentioned other states, I have a question concerning Alabama. Alabama had the Supreme Court. They just lost a redistricting case, and I'm wondering how you think that will affect possibly Louisiana now, and how that can affect Louisiana in the future. That particular case, I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
Well, when your population is 1/3 minority and 2/3 white, I mean, it stands to reason that it's going to impact it. It's going to go, in my mind, I think it'll go to where they recreate that district, and I understand that.
Well, the Alabama and Louisiana situations are similar. The proportions are the same. The plaintiff's arguments in both cases are the same. The defenses are different. Alabama's in a worse position than we are because theirs is all pretty much concentrated around Birmingham. Louisiana's is spread out. It's really hard to draw 2 majority African American districts in Louisiana without gerrymandering and making it look all crazy, which we actually tried back in the 90s and the Supreme Court threw it out. So I think we probably are going to have to come back and look at it. I hope we don't. It's not definite yet, but you know, I've been through redistricting twice now, and I was there in 2011 and 2022 when we did it. And it's the interesting thing is the map that we passed in 2011, which was approved by the Obama Justice Department and Eric Holder, is almost identical to the one we passed in 2022. And I find it really hard to believe that it can be somehow racially discriminatory in 22 when Obama and Eric Holder approved it in 2011. So I think maybe some of the rules may have changed. I do think we're going to go back and have to deal with it. I hope we don't. But I think it's going to be exceedingly difficult to draw 2 majority African American districts. And I hope we don't have to. And I can tell you, if we do, protecting Mike Johnson in this district is going to be my top priority to make sure that he gets taken care of.
This question is for both gentlemen. I really appreciate you both being here today. It means a lot to South Bossier. Representative Seabaugh, you mentioned that the predecessor in District 31 voted against constitutional carry. Louisiana, as you know, is on an island now surrounded by states that have enacted constitutional carry. I'm just interested in both of your personal opinions on constitutional carry, and would you support that the next time it comes up?
Me to start?
Alphabetical order. We'll go.
Okay. You know, one of the struggles with this is this. We live in an area that has 8 rural parishes. We look at things a lot different than a lot of others. That doesn't mean anything, but it does mean something. And it's a struggle. But, you know, Second Amendment rights, following that, being strong with that. And at this point right now, that's something that I believe in. Now, you know, I'm strongly for that. And I would like to see us be protecting everybody, because our law officers, the struggle that they're having is the fact that if someone's carrying a gun and they can't see it, and I've talked to sheriffs and stuff, they said it's a real problem. Or the kid riding down on the street with on a, what do you call those little scooter deals, you know? And I mean, they express a lot of concern over that. So, you know, you caught me off guard, and I can't be caught off guard.
I've co-authored the constitutional carry bill every time it's come up. I even authored it myself 10, 11 years ago. This will date me a little bit, but when I presented the bill in committee, this is back when we used to wear phones on clips on our hip, and I had my phone on my clip. I said, look, for this simulation, let's assume my phone is a gun. And I took my coat off. You can see it. Perfectly legal, because open carry is legal in Louisiana. And I put my coat on. Now I'm a criminal. Said it's not protecting anybody, because open carry is completely legal. What we're doing is taxing the wearing of a coat. Because essentially you have to get a permit and going through all that procedure just to wear a jacket or to hide it. And look, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think that is an infringement. You know, there are some issues, and I know all law enforcement isn't in lockstep on that. But people need to be able to protect themselves. Some people aren't going to go through the process of getting a concealed carry permit. It's fairly expensive. It's cost prohibitive to people. You have training, and you have the cost of the license itself. You shouldn't have to pay a fee to be able to protect yourself. And in this day and age, with what's going on in society, you probably all need to be carrying something.
Coach, were you for it or against it? I wasn't quite
I would,
sure.
well, Thank you for calling me up. I'm for it. I'm for it. And the things that Alan just mentioned about the fact that the open carry, that's one of the things that a gentleman and I had talked about a good bit, is the fact that you go from one thing to another with a coat or something. I thought that was a good analogy you gave. But it's a struggle for the law enforcement officers, as he said. But that's kind of where we are, and that's kind of what we need to do, stay with the right to bear arms and do all those things. And I know that some of the good people in our district, they really are strong-minded on that, and that's the people that I would be representing. Therefore, that's the way that I need to think.
So would you support Danny's bill? Well, I can't remember Danny's last name.
McCormick.
But Danny McCormick's bill, constitutional carry.
I'd have to break it completely down. I can't do that. I can't say, because right now
it didn't. It passed 2 years ago. The governor vetoed it. It didn't pass last year, and it didn't pass again this year. It came out of the House and got bogged down in the Senate.
Mr. Freely?
Representative Seabaugh, you've been on the Sheriff's Association floor leader in fighting all the issues dealing with violent crime. Would you propose any legislation if you are elected to the Senate in 2024 to help support law enforcement?
Yes, but let's wait and see if whatever passed this year gets vetoed. That'll be the first thing we do next year. There's a lot of other things that we can address. Truth in sentencing is something we have to deal with. Right now, if you get sentenced to 5 years, you're going to serve about 18 months. People, like in Caddo, I know they're having a problem. People are having to wait 3 years to even come to trial. No. So they're sitting in CCC for 3 years awaiting trial. They leave with the 10-year sentence, and they walk out that day because their time served, and they walk out. It's not honest. It's not. It's hard for the DAs. It's hard on the judges. It's hard on the public defenders and the criminal defense attorneys. We need truth in sentencing because it is literally impossible to calculate how long somebody's going to be in jail, because you get a sentence, you only serve 30 to 35% of it, and then you have good time calculations, and you have all these other things that go into it. So nobody knows how long they're actually going to be there. So truth in sentencing is something we have to address. We addressed the 17-year-olds this year. I think going back to the federal system, you serve 80%, maybe 85% of your sentence. We need to get back up to something like that so that when somebody gets convicted, you know how long they're going to be there. And there's a lot of things like that. I think you start with all the changes that went in 2016 and 2017, because that's really when crime started spiking. You know, one of the big arguments of that is, well, crime's spiking nationally. Well, those bills were rolled out nationally. Most every state passed some version of criminal justice reform in 2016, 17, and 18. Crime spiked after that. And I don't think it's any coincidence. I mean, so I would go back to those bills and start rolling things backwards. I actually have a list. When bad bills pass, I write them down. When good bills fail, I write them down. And so it's a playbook to start on 2024 when good bills are not going to get vetoed. And several of them are criminal justice, and you know there's certain things that you have to start with. And look, to understand what goes on in that building, there are people down there who call themselves victims advocates that come testify in the Criminal Justice Committee. It took me a while to figure out that in their mind, the person they're advocating on behalf of is not the victim of the crime. It's the criminal. Because in their mind, the victim is the criminal who's a victim of the corrupt criminal justice system. And that's just not the case. I know a lot of judges and law enforcement in this area, and they're not corrupt. They're doing the best they can. The problem is the rules we've given them to play by aren't working. That's right. And so we've got to change the rules, and I think you have to go back and look at 2016, 2017, and some extent 2018, start rolling that backwards, and then we can see. But it's, you know, and hopefully we won't get vetoed on the bills this year.
We can do one more question.
I've got a question.
You got one?
Who came up with a 17-year-old not being a juvenile?
John Bell Edwards.
Huh?
John Bell Edwards. Well, excuse me, it's the other way around. It was set.
He hadn't raised many kids like they had.
The Constitution says 16 and under is juvenile. Once you turn 17, you're an adult. That's in the state Constitution.
Well, how y'all down there are arguing over 16, 17 years old. That's like stomping out fire when the ants are eating your legs off.
Not really. 68% of murders committed by juveniles were committed by 17-year-olds. The vast majority of the crime, especially violent crime, being committed by people 17 and under is by 17-year-olds. 17-year-olds have flooded the juvenile justice system. And Caddo didn't have enough room for them. Nobody has enough room to house them. Like, I think Sabine Parish only has 2 or 3 beds. Natchitoches only has 2 or 3. They can only house 2 or 3 juvenile offenders at any time ever. Not so. 17-year-olds moving. Look, a very, very liberal Democrat went to the House floor last week and said voting to make 17-year-olds juveniles was the worst vote he cast in his legislative career. And we did unroll it this year. So if the governor doesn't veto it, 17-year-olds back in the adult system. The argument is this, and there's really no good answer to this. If you have a 17-year-old in adult prison, he can be preyed upon by the 30-year-olds. But if you have him in the juvenile system, he is preying on the 11 and 12-year-olds. There's no good answer. There's no good answer. The question is, so what we did, we kind of split the baby. If you're accused of or charged with a violent offense, you're an adult. If you're charged with a non-violent offense, you're prosecuted in the juvenile justice system. I thought it was a good compromise and a way to split the baby, because right now the juvenile justice system is inundated with 17-year-old violent criminals, and they literally don't have a place to put them.
You missed my whole point. The point
All right, let's try again.
Y'all are arguing over things that it probably not going to be able to do anything about, when there are some things like getting that bridge fixed and these potholes fixed that you should have done something about it already. Okay?
Well, I don't agree
when
with you.
When we fall in on that bridge over there, you know.
Well, we've passed the money, we've passed the bridge, we've funded it, and they're in the process of fixing it. So the bridge is a non-issue. It's going to get done. And the road, there's not a substandard road anywhere in my house district. I've taken care of my house district. And I'll do that for the Senate district best I can. I'm not telling you I'm going to bring them all up to speed, because you ought to go try to drive on some of these rural roads. It's a disaster. But we're going to, you might need a new car by the time we're done. But it's something that has to be addressed. But juvenile justice, the criminal justice system, is something that has to be addressed. Because if you talk to sheriffs and DAs in all 64 parishes, maybe not Orleans, the rest of them are going to be honest with you and tell you that is the #1 problem that they're facing, is what to do with 17-year-old juvenile offenders. So I don't think it's something that we can't do anything about. It's something that we have to do something about.
About that bridge, I'm squeaking one in before he stops me. We had it all set up a few years ago to get the bridge redone, and then we stopped progress because of birds, right? We
stopped progress because John Bell Edwards didn't want it to go through, but
it had nothing to do with birds.
No, he found some birds. They found a reason, but they didn't want it to go through.
Okay, so there wasn't anything done about the birds to move the birds to fix that problem. That's a non-issue now, because that was just
Well, they're not going to tear the bridge down now.
Right. That was a red herring.
Well, no, not necessarily. The way they fixed it is they're just not going to tear the bridge down. So the birds can stay there. We're just going to walk and ride bikes across it. Okay. And it's going to be a linear park.
All right.
So that's again, I don't think that was a real issue.
Okay.
But that was because the governor didn't want to do a bill up here. A bridge up here.
Thank you.
We done?
All right. Yep. We're good. Thank you all. Please give both these guys a round of applause. I really appreciate both of you. I know you're very busy, campaign trails, business, everything, taking the time to come speak to our group. I believe it's very important that the people that live in South Bossier hear from these candidates and hear what they're about. So again, guys, thank you all very much for being here. The mayor, we call it the Mayor Minute. I'm going to give you 6 minutes, but I know from the last North Bossier luncheon you might need 10, so y'all bear with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank y'all, and I'm glad to be here. I love my job because I work with great people, and I work for great people. And when I first started being a mayor, I had a great person working for me named Tracy Ponder, who was my public information officer. She had a medical problem that put her out, and she's been out for over close to my whole term so far. It'll be 2 years come July 1st, so, and I appreciate y'all letting me be in there. But I interviewed 30 people. I bet all the news people, all the paper people, all the radio people, and all of a sudden this one guy came up, and when he comes up here and talks, you're gonna see why I picked him. And his first day, he got his car and he got his phone and stuff like that. His second day was the shooting at Valerio with those officers and the people. And that morning he had to be on, and he did it. He knocked it out of the ballpark. And I'm proud to introduce my new Public Information Officer, Lewis Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to share today. To the members of the South Bossier Group, it's my honor to be here on today, and we were literally looking forward to coming, and I appreciate the time that you've allowed for the update as relates to the things that's happening in Bossier. First of all, we're proud to report that we have good things to share on today. I will share with you the things that are going on and those projects that are in various stages of completion. The information that I will share today, I will break down into 3 areas, and I won't need 6 minutes, Shane. We're breaking them down into 3 areas because I believe that these areas are important and they are of concern to us all. Those areas are public safety, quality of life, and not only new businesses, but Bossier's commitment to support existing businesses and remain business friendly. So those are the areas that we're looking at. I'm sharing public safety first because Mayor Chandler believes that government's first duty and highest obligation is public safety. Public safety and emergency preparedness is essential. I'm sharing it today because true public safety is a collaboration between law enforcement and community and concerned citizens, much like yourselves. Let's start with our police department. They're doing a great job. They're responding with very good response times, and they're working to keep our communities safe. Staffing for the police department is currently down by about 4 officers right now, but the plan is underway to fill these vacancies with a police academy that is scheduled to begin in July. In our most recent city council meeting, our city council approved funding to meet the needs of our police department in the area of staffing, as well as allocating funds to repurpose a fire station to house the Special Investigations Division and the equipment for that. I ask that you keep your eyes open because within the next week or so, the mayor will be doing a press conference. And that press conference is to report to our community our latest crime statistics. In that press conference, he will be able to report that in Bossier City, crime is down in nearly every category. So that is proud and exciting news. And as far as our Class 1 fire department, the fire department staffing is currently 5 employees short of full staffing, but right now we have 12 recruits in the academy that will graduate in July. But many of those positions will be offset by attrition as members are retiring. But the fire department is a vital part of our community, public safety, and they are operating well. Now let's talk about quality of life issues. Bossier is building and people are still moving to Bossier City. Mayor Chandler recently announced the water grade for the city of Bossier. Every water system in the state of Louisiana is tested annually. They're tested for quality, financial sustainability, operations, maintenance, customer satisfaction, and contaminants. We're proud to report that the city of Bossier City received an A on their water grade. And we have copies of those who like to share. Ms. Sonia Bales with Bossier Parish Schools has reported that Bossier Parish Schools have received numerous awards and still remains ranked amongst the highest in the state. We believe that in order for our community to continue to grow, we must attract and retain business. We want to make sure that you continue to work so that Bossier means business. Mayor Chandler is committed to strengthening his relationship and working closer with the Bossier Chamber. And a few of the new things or projects that's going on are in the Target Shopping Center, Belkis has reopened as a Belk outlet store, and that's happened on the 3rd of this month. There's the coffee manufacturer, Thornton's Blackwater Liqueur on Pearl Street, and there are a number of subdivisions that's opening as well. They're in the works, but the one I'll tell you about is a new residential subdivision. It's the Cove at Bellagio, 123 lots directly behind Bellagio. We have some things happening in the down in the boardwalk. We have Three Amigos that's opening, and the East Bank District is doing very, very well. Also here in Bel Air, we have the Bel Air lighting project. It's well underway, and the only delay for that right now is mainly due to supply and demand issues. The bids will open on Thursday, and there's been good contractor interest and good contractor feedback. As it relates to the bridge, Representative Seabaugh talked about that in detail, But of course, the mayor is very concerned about that and met on yesterday with Representative Thomas Presley in order to make sure that we were on top of that and things that's happening as it relates to that also. So it's an honor to come here on today to update you as it relates to the things that's happening in Bossier. And of course, the mayor will be glad to answer any questions you might have regarding that at this time. Thank you very much. We're proud to be here.
Thank you all for being here. We're 1 minute late. We kept you 1 minute longer, but thank you all. We'll see y'all next month when we'll also have 2 candidates here again next month.